the 1960s, Eric Clapton has had the world at his fingertips, delivering an electric wave of emotion that travels from your ears to your heart with every note. Known for his soulful and expressive style, Clapton's guitar work is filled with profound feeling that resonates deeply with listeners. But there's much more to this story. A missing piece of the puzzle. There's something else that you need to hear to understand what everyone gets wrong about Eric Clapton. Join us as we dive deep into the guitar virtuoso that helped redefine rock music and uncover why this legendary musician is behind some of music's most enduring classics. Eric Clapton has a fascinating life story, an absolutely remarkable twist unfolded in his childhood that had a profound impact on him. So it's no surprise that his music catalogue reflects his complex life, and why we have remained intrigued by him for so many years. His albums have sold a combined 280 million records worldwide, making him one of the best-selling music artists in history. He has sold out concerts throughout the world, as a solo artist and as part of his time in bands such as Cream, Derek and the Dominoes, and Blind Faith. His candid 2007 Clapton the Autobiography has sold over 1 million copies. The most commonly held belief about Eric Clapton is that he is one of the greatest guitarists of all time. This reputation stems from his influential work in the 1960s and 1970s, especially his role in pioneering British blues rock, beginning with the Yardbirds. Fans and musicians alike praise Clapton for his technical skill, soulful playing style, and ability to convey deep emotion through his music. This status is so widely accepted that the phrase "Clapton is God" was famously graffitied on walls in London during the height of his popularity. One of the most famous instances of this graffiti was spotted on a wall in the London Underground, and it became an iconic expression of his influence. Soon after, the proclamation could be seen scrawled at numerous spots, such as on club bathroom walls and construction sites. It even appeared around New York. This phrase helped solidify Clapton's reputation as one of the greatest guitarists of his time, and has since become a well-known part of rock music lore. Clapton himself has said he was humbled and embarrassed by the homage. However, you rarely, if ever, hear anyone refer to Eric Clapton's songwriting when they mention his musical accomplishments. Clapton's guitar god persona seems to have overshadowed his songwriting contributions. As a matter of fact, if you look up the ever-changing lists of top 100s by publications such as Rolling Stone and Billboard, he never even makes it on any songwriting list. But he ranks second in Rolling Stone's list of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time. Yet if we look through his catalogue of songwriting credits, you can see how many classic hit songs were also written by Eric Clapton.
Tonight, it is host to one of England's finest rock groups, the Cream. The Cream have played together for only 2 years, but during that time have, almost single-handedly, given rock a musical authority which only the deaf cannot acknowledge. Jack Bruce, lead singer, bass guitarist and harmonica player, a 25-year-old Scot who once played with Manfred Mann. Eric Clapton, a 23-year-old ex-stained glass window designer, rated by most as the finest instrumentalist of his kind in the world. And Ginger Baker, a 29-year-old Cockney, a legend, even amongst other drummers.
In 1967, Cream's Sunshine of Your Love, Eric Clapton wrote the refrain which also yielded the song's title. The song was co-written with Pete Brown. With elements of hard rock and psychedelia, it is one of Cream's best-known and most popular songs.
In the sunshine of your love.
Again in 1967, Clapton co-wrote a Cream favourite, Strange Brew, with session musician Felix Pappalardi and his wife Gail Collins. Clapton said they helped create a pop song without completely destroying the original groove. The song was also the first Cream song Clapton sang lead on instead of Jack Bruce. In a sad twist, in 1983, Collins shot Pappalardi with a derringer he had given her as a gift a few months previously. She was found guilty of criminally negligent homicide. Badge is a song co-written by good friends Eric Clapton and George Harrison and recorded by Cream on their final album, Goodbye. Harrison remembered the story. "I helped Eric write Badge, you know." Each of them had to come up with a song for that Goodbye Cream album, and Eric didn't have his written. We were walking across from each other, and I was writing the lyrics down, and we came to the middle part, so I wrote Bridge. Eric read it upside down and cracked up laughing. "What's Badge?" he said. After that, Ringo walked in drunk and gave us that line about the swans living in the park. Pattie Boyd recalled in her autobiography, Wonderful Tonight, that Eric started hanging out at their house with George and other musicians, but was quite shy and would make attempts to talk to her occasionally. He would compliment her cooking and she started catching him staring at her. Bell Bottom Blues in 1970 with Derek and the Dominoes was co-written by Clapton and songwriter Bobby Whitlock. The song delves into Clapton's growing obsession with Harrison's wife Pattie, who had asked him to get her a pair of bell-bottoms when he was touring in the United States. When he returned, he brought her the jeans. The song's longing and emotional turmoil is felt as his unrequited love is the source of this classic.
Do you wanna see me crawl across the board?
Layla is a song written by Eric Clapton and Jim Gordon. The song was inspired by a 12th century Persian love story, the story of Layla and Madnum, which had been given to Clapton. The book moved Clapton profoundly because it was the tale of a young man who fell hopelessly in love with a beautiful young girl, went crazy, and so could not marry her. Clapton wrote the song as a tribute to his unrequited love for Pattie, pouring his emotions into the song's lyrics and powerful guitar riffs. Pattie describes the emotional day when Eric took her to hear the song for the first time.
Well, I was married to George and I went to London one day and Eric asked me to stop by the flat he was living in. And anyway, I went by and he turned on his tape recorder and he was sitting on the floor and I was sitting on the sofa and he played it and I just froze. It was the most incredibly beautiful song I'd ever heard and I knew that it was about me and he was looking at me for a response and I felt, you know, incredible pressure, but it was just such a most beautiful song.
In yet another bizarre twist, in 1983, Layla co-writer Jim Gordon, who had undiagnosed schizophrenia, was impelled by voices in his head and brutally killed his 71-year-old mother in her Los Angeles area home. He was sentenced to 16 years for second-degree murder. In addition to songs, Eric also wrote many letters to Pattie. The love letters, in which he pours his soul out again and again throughout their relationship, were recently sold at Christie's auction in 2024 for up to $20,000 per letter. Clapton co-wrote Let It Rain, a song and single written by Clapton and Bonnie Bramlett of Delaney and Bonnie. The song appears on his 1970 debut studio album, Eric Clapton. He hung out in Laurel Canyon occasionally prior to writing this song. The melody has a resemblance to that of Stephen Stills' song Questions, recorded by Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and Clapton himself acknowledged its influence on Let It Rain. In September 1976, Clapton wrote Wonderful Tonight for Boyd while waiting for her to get ready to attend Paul and Linda McCartney's annual Buddy Holly party. Pattie Boyd said of Wonderful Tonight in her autobiography that Clapton had been listening to a lot of country singer Don Williams' simple storytelling of everyday life around this time. One night she'd been trying on dresses while he was ready for hours and playing around on his guitar waiting for her. She finally came into the room ready and asked him, "Do I look all right?" He then played her what he had just written.
And I say yes, you look wonderful tonight.
You can imagine how difficult it is to get through the song without actually getting the frog in the throat. I mean, it happens every time. And I think that's what real music should be about. You should have to take the risk of actually, you know, breaking down. Because it's supposed to mean that much. I mean, I'd fallen in love in the late 60s, and it kind of just simmered on and on and on. So it became something that was easy to deal with over the years. You know, we would talk about it quite a lot, and George and I would always talk openly about anything that we felt about anyone. We've always been very lucky in that respect, that he's really down-to-earth guy. And if he sees something in your eye, he wants to know what's going on. So you could never hide anything from him, and I would never try. So it was always very much talked about. The person, I suppose, who had the hardest time was poor Pattie, because there were these two men fighting over her, but she probably loved both of them equally at certain points of the time.
If we move ahead to 1977, Lay Down Sally is a song written by Clapton, Marcy Levy and George Terry. It appeared on his album Slow Hand. This irresistible country blues song is performed in the style of J.J. Cale. Clapton explained, "It's as close as I can get being English, but the band being a Tulsa band, they play like that naturally." You couldn't get them to do an English rock sound, no way. Their idea of a driving beat isn't being loud or anything, it's subtle.
I'm sad, no need to leave so soon. I've been trying all night long just to talk to you.
Bad Love was released as a US single from Eric Clapton's 1989 studio album Journeyman. Clapton co-wrote it with Foreigner's lead guitarist Mick Jones. The song features Phil Collins on drums and harmony background vocals. At the 33rd Annual Grammy Awards, Clapton won an award for Best Male Rock Vocal Performance for the song.
Sad for the lonely people. I'm on that road for so long.
I Can't Stand It was written by Eric Clapton and was the first single from his 1981 album Another Ticket. It is one of Eric Clapton's biggest hits from the early 80s, with raw honesty touching on his struggle with jealousy.
I'll explain. I feel like I'm being used.
Old Love is a song Clapton wrote with the blues musician Robert Cray, who plays guitar on the track. In 1989, after 9 years of marriage to Pattie Boyd, Clapton and Boyd divorced. This song documents the end of their relationship. Boyd told the Guardian newspaper in 2008 that she was hurt that he should write a song about such a sensitive subject. She said, "The end of a relationship is a sad enough thing, but to then have Eric writing about it as well, it makes me more sad, I think, because I can't answer back."
Leave me alone. Oh, love.
Pattie Boyd was an extraordinary inspiration for Eric Clapton. If he had been mixed up with someone else at the time, then these songs may have never come to the surface. In 1991, after isolating himself for a period after the tragic death of his son, Clapton began working again, writing music for the film Rush. He dealt with his grief by co-writing Tears in Heaven with Will Jennings for the soundtrack. Clapton said of the song, "It was in the back of my head, but it didn't really have a reason for being until I was scoring this movie. And it is a little ambiguous because it could be taken to be about Connor, but it also is meant to be part of the film."
If I saw you in heaven.
Clapton wrote My Father's Eyes whilst living in Antigua. The song was inspired by the fact that Clapton never met his biological father, Edward Fryer, who died of leukemia in 1985. Describing how he wishes he knew his father, the song also refers to his own son, Connor, who died in 1991 at age 4. In his autobiography, Clapton wrote, "In the song, I tried to describe the parallel between looking in the eyes of my son and the eyes of the father that I never met through the chain of our blood."
How will I know him when I look in my father's eyes?
In addition to these, Eric Clapton wrote many other songs as well that touch on moments of his turbulent life. While he is known for his guitar abilities, we might not have ever heard of Clapton if he had not written these classics as an expression of his tumultuous life. And so what many get wrong about Eric Clapton is that he is simply a guitar virtuoso. But he is also an incredible songwriter and storyteller, and his life story is a big part of the reason. This brings us to the stories that have been extensively written about Clapton's personal life without looking at the full story. But to understand this, we must go back to his early childhood. Clapton was born to a teenage mother who wasn't able to raise him, so he was raised by his grandparents, whom he initially believed to be his parents. Clapton believed his biological mother was his sister. Discovering the truth about his parents at age 9 profoundly affected him, leaving him with a sense of dislocation and an enduring search for belonging. In his autobiography, Clapton discussed the rejection he felt by his biological mother, who he believed was his sister for most of his early childhood, until overhearing family conversations and putting 2 and 2 together at age 9. When she came back to their house when he was age 11 with her new husband and her 2 new younger children, he confronted her by blurting out one day, "Can I call you Mummy now?" She replied that it was not a good idea after all that his grandparents had done for him. Clapton says he felt total and complete rejection and began acting out and withdrawing. This may have influenced his later tendency to drift between bands, as he was constantly seeking new outlets and experiences as he never felt he truly belonged. Clapton has always been a musical nomad, rarely settling in one place or with one band for long. This restlessness reflects both his personal struggles and his artistic drive. His early involvement in bands like the Yardbirds and then Cream, Blind Faith and Derek and the Dominoes shows a pattern of jumping from one group to another, often as soon as they achieved significant success. This could be seen as an inability to commit, which was also the case in his personal life. Clapton said, "I found a pattern in my behavior that had been repeating itself for years, decades even. Bad choices were my specialty, and if something honest and decent came along, I would shun it or run the other way." It should be noted that Eric Clapton's biological mother's name was Patricia, and she went by Pat. Clapton became obsessed with Pattie Boyd, who shares the name Patricia of his biological mother. Clapton turned to substance abuse to cope with his feelings for Pattie, repeating that familiar feeling of rejection. Clapton's struggles with addiction are well known, but the extent to which they impacted his life is even more startling in his own words. At one point, his habit was so severe that he would lock himself in his room for days at a time. His honesty about his darkest moments sheds light on the sheer depth of his struggles and the toll they took on his life. Clapton has shared his journey of seeking spirituality as a way to overcome his substance habit and find peace. After hitting rock bottom, he turned to his faith, which became a crucial part of his recovery process. Clapton has owned up to his mistakes. He has been living the life of a devoted husband and father for many years now. Eric Clapton is a profound gift to the world of music, enriching it with his talent and leaving an indelible mark that resonates deeply with audiences. It's impossible to imagine rock music without his contributions on both the guitar and songwriting.
I started off playing sort of rock and roll, and I ended up playing blues. You know, I never played anything else but sort of blues influenced stuff. You know.
You have changed often with groups, your personally.
Well, at the moment, you know, it's a pretty sickly scene at the moment because most of what's going on is a bit trendy, a bit fashionable. You know, the bands that I really like, I've always liked. You know, there are no.
Can you mention some names?
Well, for instance, the Beatles. You know.
You have always liked the Beatles.
Yeah, so
But in the beginning they didn't play blues or something.
no, but what they played in relation to the contemporary music scene was still, you know, startling because it was still advanced. You know, they've always played more advanced music contemporarily than other people. You know. I like Hendrix very much. I think he's great. Really, let me see. I like the Pink Floyd a lot. The American scene, I like the Rascals. I think the Rascals are really one of the best groups in America. Really fine group. Personally, for my own style, I was influenced very much, most of all by B.B. King. Yeah, and Otis Rush and Buddy Guy and some of the other Chicago blues guitarists. But I don't listen so much these days as I used to these people. Because it's become harder now, because they don't make so many records. You don't see them, so I've had to develop more of my own style, you know, without influences.
What kind of life do you live?
Ah,
It's changed
a
lot.
very normal life. A very normal life, yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, I really didn't change as much as you'd probably think because it's not really, you know, an individual change. I was just put into a different context. So, I mean, the things that I was doing reflected differently, you know. I mean, the context of the Yardbirds as opposed to John Mayall, I mean, it's totally different. One is pop and one is, you know, was then even more earthier blues than it is now, the stuff he played then. And, you know, it was just, I just played the same things, but they just sounded different. I seem to be able to get into the guitar more if I just don't think about, you know, if I just close my eyes and go somewhere else.